Hello everyone, I'm Debbie Lee and welcome back to my channel. Today I am here with the White Samurai Investment Group and we will be delving into something that I've seen unfold over and over again in my own life and in my clients' lives, especially within working class and middle class communities. So global investing, and more importantly, the mindset shift required to build real wealth beyond your own borders. So today, we're breaking down 3 massive ideas, from local thinking to worldwide growth, how to break out of the home country bubble. Let me write that down. Local thinking, worldwide growth. Number 2. Number 2, why investing only in your home country is a silent risk. Don't home country. So all of the silent dangers and most of the everyday investors don't even think about. And number 3, the global investor mindset. So we'll be covering the blueprint behind ordinary people building extraordinary portfolios, and 3. The global investor mindset. Okie dokie. So the reason that I am making this video is because over the past year, since working at White Samurai, I've noticed a pattern. Most people think they're investing, but they're actually just rearranging the same dollars inside the same single economy, hoping to get different results. But people also tell me I'm diversified because I own 10 companies, but they're all from the same country, in the same currency, same economic conditions, same political risk, same market cycles. That isn't diversification, it's just duplication. And this mindset didn't appear out of nowhere. It comes from decades of conditioning. We were taught to shop local, support local, work local, bank local, live local, and so naturally you think, oh, invest local, duh. But real wealth, real generational resilient wealth has never been local. It's always been global. And the wealthy have known this forever. They don't tie their entire future to one country's economy. They spread the risk across continents, across currencies, and across world-class industries, many of which don't even exist in their home country. Meanwhile, the working class, people like me, before I even entered finance, are unintentionally putting their entire financial future into one national basket, and no one tells them the risk that they're taking. No schools, no employers, definitely not the banks, not even most financial gurus either. And that is exactly why I created to make this video, to break down the boundary between what we were taught and what actually works. I have watched countless of people, everyday people, transform their finances, the moment they shift from thinking locally to globally gaining opportunities. They're not suddenly rich. They're not suddenly sophisticated. They just started operating with the same mindset that the wealthy quietly use. A global investor sees the world as one big, giant marketplace, but a local investor sees the world through their postcode. The results naturally speak for themselves. And today we are pulling back the curtain on why your local market alone is not enough, why relying on one country is one of the biggest hidden risks in finance, and how ordinary people adopt a global investor mindset to build robust, crisis-proof portfolios. Let's get into it. So, I want to just give a little story about the tale of two investors. Same starting point, different outcomes. And this captures exactly why global thinking transforms someone's financial trajectory. Not because they earn more, but because they think differently. So, let's name them Maya and Carlos. So, they work together, they're two co-workers, and they worked the same job in a major retail chain. Very long hours, inconsistent schedules, and managers who rotated out every 6 months, and paychecks that were a little too tight by the end of the month. They'd stand next to each other in the break room comparing their bills and just like laughing their heads off. They were laughing also off of the stress that most of the working class people do, because what else can you do? You have to cope, you just have to keep grinding, and you just hope that tomorrow is going to be some different outcome. And both of them at age 28, they both wanted to decide, enough is enough. I want more. More security, more stability, more dignity, definitely. They didn't want to spend the next 20 years fighting for the same battles that their parents did. So they made a pact. Let's start investing, even if it's small, even if it's slow. And for a while, they were identical. They watched the same videos, they followed the same accounts, they put $100 here, $200 there. They bought companies that everyone recognized, the big national brands people in their country trusted, because that's what you do when you're a brand, you're brand new. Pardon me. It's been a long day. You cling to familiarity, but the first major split between them didn't come from knowledge, it came from frustration. And about 2 years in, Maya noticed something. Every time her country had a political mess, a scandal or a policy shift, interest rates announcement, her entire portfolio shuddered. Sometimes it just dropped sharply, and sometimes it just didn't even go anywhere, it just stalled. Sometimes it also moved unpredictably for reasons she didn't understand. And the pattern was clear. Her financial life was being dragged around by forces completely outside of her control, and that really irked her. It made her feel very small and very much like she was just trying so hard to build a future, but it was just slipping away like sand in her hand. So one night, after she was tirelessly scrolling through an article about how wealthy families invest, she noticed something. None of them, not one single family, kept all of their money in their home country. It wasn't because they were adventurous. It wasn't because they were trying to be fancy. It was because they understood a principle nobody teaches in schools. A single country can never carry your entire future safely. So that really hit Maya hard, and she screenshotted it. And meanwhile, Carlos, he felt fine. He felt like his portfolio, he liked his portfolio, he felt comfortable. He was very patriotic about it. And for a few years, the market in their country was strong. His investments grew very quickly and sometimes faster than Maya's. He teased her about global experiments. Why look outside? We have everything we need right here, right? Why risk it? But then the reality came back to bit them. The way that reality always does. Their country entered a recession. Oh no. It wasn't even the worst recession. It was just a standard downturn. But people like Maya and Carlos, normal, hard-working people, it was enough to just shake the ground beneath them. Sales at work dropped and hours got cut and inflation spiked and rent increased and groceries became more noticeably expensive, and suddenly both of their portfolios reacted, but in completely different ways. Carlos's portfolio fell like a domino line. Not because he made bad choices, but because just every company that he owned lived inside of the same struggling economy. The same interest rate, the same political tension, the same consumer decline, the same currency weakness. Everything was correlated. Everything was connected. Everything fell together. Everything fell apart together. And he told Maya, I feel like I lost years of growth. All just in the matter of a couple of months, just gone like that. But Maya was like, couldn't be me. Her portfolio dipped, but only slightly. Some declined. Some parts of it did decline, but other regions thrived. Some countries were in growth cycles. Some industries were exploding. Some economies were stabilizing, while hers was stumbling. Her global exposure acted like shock absorbers. The downturn didn't derail her, it simply just balanced itself out. And that's when Carlos realized the difference. Maya didn't have one economy powering her future. She had quite a few. One currency, one government, one market cycle, one country's mistakes, one region's volatility. That's where Carlos's entire financial future held. But Maya, her wealth was supported by continents, by innovation that happens in multiple languages, by growth cycles that she didn't need to predict, by industries that didn't exist in her country, by populations and economies working so hard on different timelines. Maya wasn't a genius, but she also wasn't lucky. She didn't earn more. She didn't beat the market. She just simply refused to let one country dictate her entire destiny. And the best part, Carlos and Maya aren't rare. They represent millions of everyday people navigating the same fork in the road. Stay local and carry out one country's risk, or think global and build multi-country resilience. The wealthy have always chosen global. Now, it's time for everyday people to understand why. That brings us to topic number 1. From local thinking to worldwide growth. So, when I first started working closely with everyday investors, real people, the working class, the middle class, parents, young adults, new entrepreneurs, I noticed something quite universal. Most people think about money through a local lens, a neighborhood lens. What's around me? What exists around me? It's not because anyone lacks intelligence. It's not because they don't care either. It's just because that we were never taught, right? We learn about the streets when we grow up. We learn about the streets that we grew up on, the schools that were around us. You know all your friends that went to school. You know all your friends that went to that other school. All of the business in our city, on our streets, all of the economies of our country. But nobody in the working class community is being raised at the dinner table with conversations like, let's talk about how global currency flows affect long-term portfolio stability, or which emerging markets offer the best demographic tailwinds for the next decade. I know I never had those conversations at the dinner table. People with money talk like that. People with money grow up hearing about foreign markets and offshore accounts and global diversification, multinational opportunities, currency exposure, tax efficiencies, even if they don't fully understand it yet. But the working class people locally, we grew up hearing, stick to what you know, keep your money close, buy a home here, invest in the local market. And while those intentions come from a place of protection, what actually is happening is we inherit a local mindset in a global world. And here is the uncomfortable truth. And I do say this with a lot of empathy because I grew up the same way. That's me. That was me. Local thinking builds local wealth. Global thinking builds generational wealth. Let me explain exactly what that means. Local thinking keeps you in a small circle. Most people build their entire financial identity around one currency, one job market, one political system, one economic cycle, one property market, one stock exchange, one set of opportunities. But the world is just not one-dimensional, is it? It's not. At least not anymore. You and I live in a time where information is accessible to quite literally every single person on this planet. You can invest in American tech from the UK. You can buy Asian consumer market exposure from Australia. You can hold European blue chip companies from South Africa. You can invest in entire global sectors from anywhere on Earth. Yet most people still limit their future to the invisible borders of the country they happen to be born in. Imagine having access to mansion-sized buffets of opportunities and only ever eating from the first table because that's just the one closest to the door. That's local thinking. Number 2, worldwide growth requires breaking the comfort loop. The biggest barrier that I've seen in people isn't a lack of capital, it's a lack of comfort. Familiarity feels safe. I know the companies here. I understand the country's economy. I've seen these brands since I have ever lived, ever. In my childhood, I know everything. I can drive past the headquarters of my investment companies. They're just down the road. And because it feels safe, most people assume it is safe. But wealth isn't built within the boundaries of comfort. Wealth is built when you extend beyond the walls of what you have been told is normal. Because here is something that the wealthy people know. Your comfort zone is the most expensive place that you can live. Local thinking keeps you feeling secure but stagnant. Global thinking feels very unfamiliar at first, but it does open the doors to compounding growth that your hometown simply cannot provide. Number 3, worldwide, the world is growing faster than any one country ever will. Look at the actual structure of global wealth. The fastest growing companies are multinational companies. The fastest growing markets are emerging economies. The most innovative sectors are spread across multiple continents. The strongest demographic growth is outside Western nations. The biggest consumer markets are in Asia. The most resource-rich regions are in Africa, South America. No single country holds all the innovation. No single country holds all the demand. No single country holds all the economic power. When you develop a global mindset, you stop thinking like, my country is the center of the financial universe. And you start thinking like, the world is a giant ecosystem, because it is, where growth moves, cycles shift, industries rotate, and opportunities appear literally everywhere. That's the mindset the difference between local thinking and worldwide growth. The wealthy don't invest at home first. They invest where growth is. And there is a myth floating around about working class circles. You should invest locally because that's safe. But here's the truth. The wealthy invest globally because they want to be safe. They want global currencies, global markets, global exposure, global real estate companies, global opportunities, because they know safety isn't familiarity, safety is in diversification. Meanwhile, working class investors are taught, invest in the companies around you, which sounds good until the economy dips. And then you're thinking, oh, maybe I should have invested in another country. Until local industries struggle, until local currency loses value. That's happened before. Until local markets underperform global markets for like 10 years. But by then it's too late. Your money was stuck inside the borders of local thinking. Wealthy people simply avoid that mistake altogether. Number 5, local thinking makes your portfolio dependent on one future. Imagine, if your entire financial life depended on one country choosing the right leaders, one central bank making the right decisions, one tax system staying favorable, one property market performing well, one stock exchange staying competitive, one currency remaining strong, that is not a strategy. That's a gamble dressed like tradition. Worldwide growth, on the other hand, spreads your financial destiny across dozens of economies, not just one. If one slows down, the other grows. If one currency drops, others rise. If one sector crashes, others expand. If one region struggles, others lead. Global thinking gives you what local thinking can't: protection, opportunity, and mobility. Number 6, global investing isn't just a strategy, it's an identity shift. This is where the mindset transformation truly happens. When you go from local thinking to global thinking, your identity shifts from I invest in what I know to I invest in what grows. From my country's economy decides my future to I decide where my money grows worldwide. From I'm limited what's around me to I'm connected to global wealth creation. This shift is the difference between panic and calm, scarcity and abundance, limitation versus expansion, and dependency versus autonomy. And once you experience it, you can never go back. It's like upgrading from a single room to an entire house and then realizing the house sits in a giant global neighborhood full of wealth and opportunity and future prosperity. So, number 7, local thinking is survival. Global thinking is growth. Working class families were taught survival thinking. Stay close, stay safe, and stay small. You don't want to risk it. Wealthy families were taught expansion thinking. Look outward, look forward, look global. And that's where the real dividing line between stagnant wealth and generational wealth exists. Because you can build savings accounts locally, but you can also build a retirement fund locally. You can also build a small portfolio locally, but what you cannot access is world-class wealth with a mindset trapped within national borders. So, shifting from thinking local to worldwide growth isn't about complexity, it's just about permission. Permission to let your money travel, permission to explore your growth outside of your postcode, permission to think like an investor, not like a bystander. And you don't need millions to adopt a global mindset. Please, you do not. You just need the courage to step out of the financial identity that you were raised in and into one that builds the future that you want. So that brings us to topic number 2. Why investing only in your home country is a silent risk. So most people don't realize this, but one of the biggest financial risks in their life is something that they don't think about. They don't question, they don't even realize that they're doing it. It's not inflation, it's not debt, it's not market crashes, it's home country bias. The unconscious belief that my country's safe, my country's enough, my country is where my money should stay. And this mindset, while innocent on the surface, silently sabotages the long-term wealth potential of millions of everyday people. Not because they're doing something wrong, but because they were never simply taught how to think beyond what's familiar. And when you invest only in your home country, you're not just limiting your opportunities, you're tying your entire financial destiny to the rise and fall of one nation. So let's break it down exactly why this is such a dangerous, yet nearly invisible risk. 1, you're double exposed without knowing it. If you live, work, earn, spend, and invest in the same country, you are unintentionally putting yourself in a risky position. Your income, savings, retirement plan, stock investments, property, currency, job stability are all tied to one single economy. And if that country slows down, or even worse, recesses, everything that you depended on gets hit at the same time. This creates a financial domino effect. Job loss, pay cuts, falling investments, declining property values, currencies weakening, rising cost of living. We don't need it. We don't need it anymore. All happening simultaneously, hitting the same person in the same economy with no external support. This isn't diversification. That's concentration disguised as tradition. And the wealthy avoid this. The working class accidentally walks straight into it. No country stays on top forever. Economies rotate. This is something very few everyday people understand. Global economy leadership is temporary. Every major country that once dominated the world economy eventually slowed down, or it was shifted, or it was overtaken by new growth. The UK led the Industrial Revolution, then it plateaued. Japan dominated the 1980s, then stagnated for around 30 years. China exploded in the 2000s, then slowed as demographics shifted. The US leads tech, but its dominance is challenged by global markets. No economy stays number one forever. No market outperforms forever. No country is immune to cycles. But if your entire financial life is tied to only one nation, you rise with that country and you also fall with it too. Meanwhile, all the global investors who don't care which country is winning this decade because they're invested everywhere else. Number 3, the world's growth isn't where most people think it is. The working class investor is often told, just invest in companies you see around you. Support local, stick to what you know. But the truth is, the world's fastest growth almost never happens in your home country. The data is very clear. The fastest growing GDP markets are emerging economies. The fastest growing population centers are outside of the Western nations. Fastest growing middle classes are in Asia. The fastest growing technological innovation is global, and the fastest stock returns rotate every year. So no country has been the top performing stock market for 2 years in a row, not once. When you only invest locally, you would miss the entire global growth cycle simply because they aren't happening in your postcode. That's not strategy, that's limitation. Number 4, investing locally creates single point failure. So imagine your entire financial future is a chair with one leg. As long as that one leg holds, everything seems fine. But if that leg weakens a little bit, even slightly, the chair becomes very unstable, and you don't want to sit on a chair like that. This is exactly what happens when you depend on only one economy. One election, one recession, one policy change, one currency drop, one industry decline can impact every part of your life at once. A globally diversified investor, their chair has multiple legs across multiple continents, multiple currencies, multiple markets, and multiple sectors. If one leg weakens, the structure still stands. That's the difference between financial fragility and financial resilience. Number 5, inflation and currency risk are localized. Your wealth shouldn't be. Most people underestimate how much their wealth depends on their currency. If your country currency weakens, you lose purchasing power, even if your investments grow. For example, if your country's currency drops 20%. Your investments have to rise to just above 25% just to stay at the same value globally. That's a hidden risk that people never see. When wealthy investors hold assets in multiple currencies, they automatically protect purchasing power, reduce local inflation impact, protect currency slippage, ensure that their global wealth stays stable. Ordinary people could do this too. They were just never taught how. Number 6, local markets are often small, slow, or undiversified. Some countries have only a handful of large companies, industries dominated by banks and mining, limited innovation, small tech sectors, slow population growth, slow trading volume, restrictive regulations, but people invest there anyway, simply because it's home. Meanwhile, global investors have access to Silicon Valley tech, European engineering, Korean innovation, Japanese robotics, Indian digital expansion, African demographics, Latin American resources, Middle Eastern energy, global consumer demand. Why limit your future to just one small slice of the global economy? Why place boundaries around your own wealth creation? You weren't born financially local. You were just conditioned into it. Number 7, the silent part. Most people don't even realize they're doing it. This is what makes home country bias so dangerous. It's invisible. People don't say, I choose to limit myself to one country's opportunities. They simply grow up not even knowing anything else existed. Working class families were raised with local banks, local business news, local markets, local real estate, local investments, local financial advice. Nobody explained global diversification. Nobody explained international exposure. Nobody explained multi-currency strategy. So people stay local by default, not by choice. But default thinking is one of the biggest enemies of wealth. Number 8, the wealthy play an entirely different game. Wealthy people don't ask, is my country safe? They ask, how do I position my money across the safest and fastest growing regions globally? They don't think, I invest where I live. They think, I invest where growth exists. They don't rely on one currency, or one market, or one political system. Their wealth is borderless. And that's why they stay wealthy. Not because they're lucky, but because they're less exposed. You don't have to be rich to think globally. You just have to stop thinking locally. Global investing isn't complicated anymore. You don't need $100,000 million trillion. You don't need a financial advisor. You don't need a finance degree. You don't need fancy accounts or connections or insider access. You only need one mindset shift. Your home country is not your financial destiny. Your future can be built from every corner of the world. You just have to allow it. So, you can love your country. You can appreciate your country. You can be very patriotic. I know I am. You can be proud from where you're from. But your money doesn't have to stay there to prove that. You build wealth by letting your money grow wherever the opportunity grows. Not where you were born, not where you feel safe, and not where tradition says it should stay. The world is bigger, the world is richer, and the world is open. And your portfolio should be too. So that brings us to topic number 3, the global investor mindset. how ordinary people build extraordinary portfolios. When people hear the phrase global investor, they instantly imagine someone wealthy or very sophisticated sitting in a high-rise office all the way at the top with screens everywhere, analysing everything, looking at all the charts and sipping espressos, mountains of coffees. But here's the truth. Global investors aren't born, they're built. And the strongest ones come from ordinary backgrounds, not elite backgrounds. They're just nurses, they're delivery drivers, they're teachers, retail workers, young parents, immigrants, students, tradespeople, 9-to-5 employees. They didn't grow up talking about wealth. They didn't grow up hearing about global markets or diversification. They didn't grow up with the language of finance. They grew into it. They learned to think differently. They learned to see opportunity outside their neighborhood. They learned to detach their financial destiny from one single country. They learned to let their money travel even before they could. And that mindset shift, not a higher income, is what wealth is built from. So we will be breaking down the exact mindset that separates ordinary local investors from extraordinary global wealth builders. These are the beliefs and habits and attitudes and perspectives that you must adopt if you want to build a portfolio that can grow through any economy, any political climate, any currency, and any global cycle. So let's get into it. Number one, they see the world as their wealth map, not their country. Most people think, what opportunities does my country offer? Global investors think, what opportunities does the world offer? And how do I position myself to benefit from them? Local investors restrict themselves without even realizing it. Global investors expand themselves internationally. A local thinker sees borders. A global investor sees economies. A local thinker sees one market. A global investor sees billions of consumers. A local thinker sees familiar companies. A global investor sees innovation across continents. Because they're not tied to where they were born, they're tied to where their growth is. And once you make that shift, you immediately start playing a bigger game. They reject the myth that wealth requires complexity. One of the biggest lies that working class people have been fed is you need to be so advanced to invest globally. But you don't. Wealthy people don't sit around memorizing the stock charts. They aren't reading like 400-page financial reports every night. They aren't timing the market with magic predictions either. Most wealthy people are not better investors. They just have a better mindset. The mindset of simplicity. They invest globally. They invest globally through broad market ETFs, index funds, global funds, multi-economy exposure, multi-currency holdings, multinational companies. They don't chase complexity, they chase access. And ordinary people can access those exact same tools today with a smartphone. Everyone's got one. And an internet connection. Everyone's got one. The difference isn't intelligence, it's awareness. They understand that familiar doesn't mean unsafe. Working class investors often treat foreign markets like foreign danger. So, wealthy investors know the riskiest thing that you can do is keep your money in one place. The unknown is not the threat. The unchanging is. Global investors don't run from unfamiliar markets. They just investigate them. They think, what does this region offer that my own country doesn't? What opportunities exist here that don't exist at home? How can this market strengthen my long-term portfolio? They understand that opportunity rarely comes from what you already know. It comes from what you're willing to learn. They think in decades, not in singular days. So local investors want returns now. Global investors know returns always. Global investors want returns always. They don't chase the hype of the moment. They don't panic when the market dips. They don't sell because the news got a little bit emotional. A global investor knows the US might lead this decade. Asia could lead the next one. Emerging markets could lead after that. Innovation rotates, wealth rotates, growth rotates. But over decades, global exposure always outperforms national exposure. They play the long game, not the local game. They see risk differently. Here is how the two mindsets view risk. The local investor might say, investing globally feels risky. But a global investor might say, not investing globally is risky. The local investors fear what they can't see. Global investors fear what they can't diversify. A global investor understands 4 core truths. Every country has political risk. Every currency has inflation risk. Every economy has slowed down cycles, and every market experiences crashes. So they protect themselves by spreading across borders. Their portfolios don't rely on hope, they rely on structure. They treat currencies like tools, not traps. Most people only earn and save in their local currency. Global investors don't. They think, how can I preserve my purchasing power globally? How do I separate my wealth from one country's inflation rate? What currencies benefit my long-term future? This is why wealthy investors often hold the US dollar, the euro, the Japanese yen, the Australian dollar, and exposure to emerging currencies indirectly. They understand that currency diversification is wealth diversification. And the moment that you understand that as well, you stop seeing your national currency as the only safe place for your wealth and start seeing it as one option in a global system, because it is. They trust systems, not emotion. Global investors know that markets correct themselves, countries evolve, economies rotate, technology shifts, populations change, and policy cycles move. They don't make emotional decisions. They follow systems. Systems like dollar cost averaging, global index exposure, diversified geography, diversified sectors, diversified currencies, long-term holding, periodic rebalancing. Emotion loses money. Systems build wealth, and ordinary people can follow those systems just as easily as wealthy people can. They believe wealth is built by participation, not perfection. Most ordinary people think that they need to avoid global investing because what if I get it wrong? A global investor would think, what if I never try? They aren't perfectionists, they're just participants. They know that you don't need to pick the best country. You don't need to pick the best time to enter. You don't need to predict global cycles, and you don't need to be an expert. You just need to show up consistently. Wealthiness isn't about perfect timing, it's about persistent involvement. They treat wealth like a skill, not a mystery. People who grew up without financial education often believe wealth is either luck, talent, privilege, timing, inheritance, but global investors know the truth. Wealth is a learnable skill. A skill based on mindset, discipline, understanding global cycles, managing risk, diversifying exposure, thinking beyond borders, staying consistent. No one is born knowing these things. They learn, they practice, they adjust, they grow, just like you can. They decide their future isn't limited to their postcode. So this is the core of the global investor mindset. Local thinking says, my opportunities are tied to where I live. A global investor thinking says, my opportunities are tied to where I choose to invest. A local thinker says, I'm limited to my country's economy. A global thinker says, I'm connected to the world's economy. A local thinker says, if I grow, my country grows. But a global thinker says, I grow because the entire world grows. This shift is what creates extraordinary portfolios, not luck or privilege or complexity, just perspective. So, you don't need to be wealthy to think globally, but you need to think globally to become wealthy. The global investor mindset isn't elitist, it isn't advanced, and it's not an exclusive club. It's accessible, it's learnable, it's available to you right now. Ordinary people become extraordinary wealth builders when they stop thinking, what does my country allow me to do? And start thinking, what does the world allow me to build? And that's the shift. That's the identity. That's the gateway to a portfolio that supports you for the rest of your life. If this episode opened your eyes to how global investing really works, just remember, you don't have to navigate this alone. At White Samurai, we help everyday people build smarter, diversified portfolios that aren't limited by borders or trends or fears. If you're working class, if you're middle class, if you're just tired of feeling like wealth is something other people get access to, you're exactly who we're here for. Your financial freedom can build with strategy, not with guesswork. So, just as a summary, global wealth isn't built by staying local. It grows when you understand industries. Money flows, opportunities across the world. Relying only on your home country is a silent risk. But shifting into a global mindset gives you more stability, more growth paths, and certainly a lot more control. Ordinary people become extraordinary investors when they stop thinking locally, local safety, and when they start thinking global strategy. Thank you everyone for making it this far. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel where we discuss all the other topics of financial freedom. And please check out White Samurai Investment Group website for all of your deeper questions. All of the nitty-gritty queries that you have about any type of investing, how they can do to help, what they can do to help, what they can do for you, essentially. How you can help yourself. So if you're scared to message them directly, message me. Leave me a comment, message my inbox, and myself or the team will always do our best to help. And thank you for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.